Hi guys, and welcome to Bailey's Academy Online. Today's video is part 2 in our Tasting Espresso series. Today we're going to learn how to use our coffee flavour wheel, and we're going to break down step by step the structure of sensory evaluation of our espresso. So we're going to cover what's the difference between aroma and taste, and how best to describe mouthfeel and body. If this is the first video in this series that you've come across, I highly recommend going backwards and watching part 1 before continuing with this guide. So, let's get started. This beautiful and colourful tool is very useful when it comes to learning how to taste espresso. It also helps us gain our confidence when learning coffee descriptors. It really is wonderfully structured. Its use of colour coding is very user-friendly, and it's also beneficial in helping us access information that is stored in our sensory memory banks. When starting to use the flavour wheel, we start by working from the centre outward. What we see here in the centre are our primary flavour groups. These are likely the first descriptors that come to mind when we begin tasting espresso. When we start evaluating the structure of our espresso, we will come across some of our primary groups in aroma, flavour, and aftertaste. Our goal while using the flavour wheel is to try and define further what we experience by tasting again and moving outward as we go. We have to be careful to make notes along the way. Is it fruity? And what kind of fruit? Dried? Berry? Taste further and try to narrow it down more. Okay, so let's begin tasting our espresso. The equipment you're going to need for this is a teaspoon, a glass of water, a notepad and pen, your espresso, and yourself. It may seem like a lot of information to begin with, but once we understand each step, you'll be tasting your espresso like a professional. Appearance is the first of our senses that we use to evaluate the coffee, and it can be a good guide in helping us understand what to expect from our espresso. An espresso should pour slow, even, and fall within our extraction time. Visual cues of the coffee pouring too fast or slow from your machine are an indication of an unbalanced espresso. With this in mind, we should really only begin tasting our espresso once it has been dialed in. There's no point in tasting the espresso if it isn't correct, as it can lead to sensory fatigue. Crema is an important part of our espresso, and its appearance will vary from coffee to coffee. What is important is being comfortable with being able to describe the crema. Is it thick or thin? Does it have the appearance of tiger striping? Does it cover the surface of your espresso, or does it disappear quickly? Some of the more important things day to day are noticing issues with your crema where there may not have been any before. This could be an indication of recipe variance, coffee freshness, or machine issues. So it's important to keep an eye out for it. After this part of our evaluation, we then use our teaspoon to stir our espresso and begin the next step. Aroma makes up a significant part of how we experience coffee. When referring to aroma, we're speaking about the vaporizing compounds that coffee gives off, and we use our nose or our sense of smell to detect this. There are 2 different types of aroma. Directly. This is when we directly sniff the coffee. This is our first step when evaluating espresso. So we raise the cup to our noses and take a direct sniff of the espresso. Tiny short bursts are recommended, so take your time and think, what does the aroma remind you of? And look to your sensory wheel. Indirectly, we experience this when we swallow, and this is what's known as aftertaste. This is usually the last experience that we will note down after swallowing our espresso. I recommend taking a short breath outward after swallowing to amplify this. What does the aftertaste remind you of? Can we locate it anywhere on the flavour wheel as well? Taste is sensation perceived by our tongue using our taste buds. In coffee currently, we experience 5 basic tastes: acidic, sweet, bitter, salty, and umami. Generally speaking, when tasting espresso, we are focusing on acidity, sweetness, and bitterness. When evaluating your espresso, you're not only assessing the intensity of these characteristics, but also the qualities. As we learned earlier in part 1, a short, sharp, sour espresso taste can be an indication of under-extraction. But a well-extracted shot with a crisp, bright acidity can be reminiscent of the qualities of a green apple. Similarly, a well-extracted shot may have high-quality bitterness, which could be reminiscent of dark chocolate. When we use the term flavour in coffee, we are referring to how we experience taste and aromas combined. So, for example, if my notes read a fresh, fruity aroma, intense, bright acidity, great sweetness, and a pleasant, lingering finish with a mouth-watering mouthfeel, a flavour that would come to me would be pink grapefruit. Many flavours are perceived due to this interaction and synergy between aromas and tastes. When developing your sensory skills, it's helpful to write down anything and everything that the coffee reminds you of, and then we can break it down from there. For example, if it reminds you of a Snickers chocolate, then we're likely to find peanuts, caramel, and milk chocolate in our coffee. When evaluating coffee, we are also experiencing body and mouthfeel. These characteristics explore the tactile and viscosity of the liquid espresso. So, when we evaluate these characteristics, we are looking for sensation and not flavour. At some point in our barista lives, we have experienced full-fat, semi-skimmed, and low-fat milk. Each of these have a very different tactile experience, and if we sample a small amount of each, we would all describe them a little bit differently. When learning how to evaluate body and mouthfeel, it's important to remember that body is the weighted experience that the coffee leaves in our mouth. So we would use descriptors along the lines of heavy, medium, or light, whereas mouthfeel is the sensation that the coffee creates or leaves in our mouth. So we would use descriptors along the lines of dry, smooth, or sparkling. 3 good tips to get you started before you taste your espresso are: 1. Always serve your espresso in a warm cup. 2. Always stir your espresso. 3. Stay hydrated. We really can get carried away, guys, when starting to learn how to taste espresso. So this is a step that I highly recommend not skipping. Okay, so let's pull it all together. Start by preparing your espresso to recipe as normal. Make a note of everything that you're going to be evaluating in order. This will help you stay on track. Start by making a note of the appearance, and then after, evaluating your crema. Stir your espresso and move on to assessing the aroma. Make sure to make good use of your sensory wheel. Work through the rest of the structure: taste, flavors, mouthfeel, body. So, we've covered a lot here today, but with a little time and patience, you'll be able to evaluate any espresso that comes your way. This will be really useful down the line when it comes to making your own espresso recipes. Keep an eye out in future for a video on this topic, but for now, start pulling those shots, tasting that espresso, and building your sensory confidence. Thanks for joining us today. See you soon.